Hi there, my name is Adam Goodrich, and in this video I'll give you an introduction to Gaia and Gaia Pro 2023. Gaia is an all-in-one scene creation system for Unity that makes it easy and fast to create beautiful worlds. The basic workflow is to create the terrain via the stamping system, populate it in different styles via the spawning system, and then add a runtime into it so that you can run around and explore your environment. Gaia is extensible in that you can create your own stamps and biomes to get any environment you want. One of the great strengths of Gaia is that Gaia creates vanilla or standard Unity environments. What this means is that you can mix and match Gaia with your own assets and tools without being locked into one publisher. When we create worlds, we always start with Gaia and then layer other assets and tools on top as needed. You can see this in action in the montage, where we have used Gaia in conjunction with other assets and tools to create some beautiful environments. After the montage, I will showcase some of the new features in Gaia 23 and then demonstrate how to create a rich environment for desktop and then a low poly environment for mobile or VR. I hope you enjoyed our little montage there. As you can probably see, Gaia makes it easy to create a wide range of environments for your games and sims. In the rest of this video, I'll showcase some of the new features of Gaia, and then we'll jump in and we'll build some worlds. One of the first changes you'll see with Gaia 23 is the new setup system. Gaia contains quite a large amount of content, so the new setup system breaks Gaia down into core, biomes, and runtime, and you can choose which parts you want to install. After Gaia has been installed, the next change you'll see is in the project settings section of the configuration tab. Gaia launched in 2015, and over the years we've learned a lot about how to make Unity run well with open world scenes. And in the past, what we used to do is just apply these settings for your project. Now, in Gaia 23, we give you the option as to whether you want to use these settings or not, and as much as we can, we'll automate the installation of them for you. While there are numerous quality of life improvements in Gaia, one of the next major changes you'll see is in the Create Runtime section. What we've done here is remove the majority of the legacy assets and updated them with all of the latest equivalents from Unity. So for example, we now have full support for the latest controllers from Unity, the latest HDRP water, the latest Unity skies, and the latest Unity terrain detail system. Okay, let's get busy and build something. To access Gaia, go to Window, Procedural Worlds, Gaia, Show Gaia Manager. Gaia Manager is the starting place for all Unity workflows with Gaia. Gaia Manager is broken up into a standard tab where we have project configuration, creating your world, creating your runtime, and also helping to create your build. And then we have the advanced tab where you can access individual Gaia tools. Some of the cool things in here are things like the scanner, which allows you to create new stamps either from 3D objects or from images. Then we have the stamper, and something I quite like is the terrain to mesh converter. This is really good for creating low poly environments or even imposters and other much more lightweight environments to stick in the background. And then finally, we have the Help tab. This gives you access to all of our assets on the Asset Store, a quick link to the Quick Start Guide, access to our tutorials and library. You can join our community and go to Canopy to get support. And of course, you can leave a review as well. Okay, let's create our first world. Here I am in the Create World tab inside of Gaia Manager. I'll choose my world size, and this is something you can customize. So for example, medium is a 1 kilometer square world, but we could change the size if we wanted to, or we could add additional tiles. So if we wanted 10 by 10, we'd have a 10 kilometer square world. I'll just pop this out the road so you can see it. Quite large. Let's just go back to 1 because it's faster for our demo. Then we'll look at our target platform. These are the settings that Gaia uses to configure your terrain and also to configure the spawn density. So what we're doing here is optimizing the settings for the terrains we create for you. So for example, if we went to mobile and VR, we're actually creating a much lighter terrain for you. Then we have our target biome. A biome is a set of assets that we spawn onto your terrain. It's your texturing, your plants, your buildings, and so on. And one of the major differences between Gaia and Gaia Pro is that with Gaia, we give you a fairly small starter set of biomes. And with Gaia Pro, we provide much more content. And Gaia Pro also has a streaming system for larger worlds. What this means is that we can choose which terrains are in memory and out of memory and help manage resources on constrained devices. So I'll choose my Alpine Meadow, and then we'll choose our workflow. In Gaia, we have 2 main workflows, and you can mix and match them. World Designer does the work for you. You just choose the style, and it'll do the rest. Then Manual with Stamper allows you to customize everything about the environment you create. Let's go for World Designer for our first world and the Alpine Meadow. We'll go Create World Designer. I'm going to pop my Gaia Manager out the road. What we've done here is given you a low fidelity preview of our environment. Here we have our world and world size and biome settings that we set up in Gaia Manager. Then we have the shape of our world. Here we're surrounded by water, but we could also surround ourselves by mountains. What's also interesting here is that we have a lot of control over the underlying parameters. So if I clear my stamps, what we've got here is a base mesh, and you can change the noise and the detail that you pass through to the environment as it's created. I'll just go back with my defaults. Then you have the world detail. Now these are the types of features we're going to stamp into your environment. To give you a bit of an idea of what is stamping, stamping is the process of applying a shape into the terrain. I look at terrain as if it's cookie dough, and then we stamp mountains, hills, mesas, rivers, and so on into that terrain. So what we're doing here is changing the frequency of one type of terrain feature as compared to another. So now let's randomize our stamps. What Gaia is going to do is choose from this collection of stamps and mix and match them so that the base terrain takes on the features of the stamps. Boom. There's an island with some nice flat playable area and some interesting mountains. I could randomize my stamps, or I could randomize everything. There's another good flattish environment with a river system and a nice mountain. Let's go with that. So I'm going to hit Generate World, and what Gaia will do is actually take this low fidelity preview and actually turn it into a working terrain. Let's watch it. Boom. So Gaia has now created a nice working terrain and has done its initial texture pass on that terrain. You can choose how you do this. I prefer to actually see this in situ. So the next thing I'm going to do is go back to Gaia Manager, and I'm in the Create Runtime tab this time. I'll add a FlyCam controller, but as I mentioned, we could also add some of these other controllers, or you could add your own. I'm going to add some daytime lighting. I'm going to add Unity's HDRP water, and I'm going to add in a wind zone. And I'll pop this out the road so you can see what's going on, because it's rather cool seeing this happen. Boom. And there we go. We've added our runtime. We've got some nice skies and lighting, and we've got some water. And just to give you a sense of how Gaia does what it does, what we've got here is our Gaia runtime. Now these are the things that we've added into your scene for runtime, like skies and lighting and so on, player camera, water, wind zone. We've added a screenshotter because Gaia comes with a screenshotting system as well. Then we have the Gaia tools. These are the tools that we use to create the environment itself, and you can delete these afterwards. And then we have our terrains and everything to do with the terrains. So let's press play and see what we came up with. Here we have a nice environment. Zoom around a bit. Looks pretty cool. When I'm thinking about worlds, I often like to have some nice flat playable area, and if you've got a nice forest and so on, then the player can go through and explore and find things. This looks alright to me. So now I'm going to show you a bit of a hybrid workflow. And this is great because let's say, even though this is mostly right, I'm not 100% happy. I want another bit of a hill or something over here. So let's add a stamper to our scene, manager. I'm going to go to my advanced tab, go to Guide Tools. I'm going to add a blended stamper. Now a stamper and a blended stamper are the same thing, but the blended stamper has a mask set up automatically so that when you add new features into your scene, they're nicely blended into your terrain. So one of the cool things about the stamper is you have complete control and visualization over where and how things are going to be placed into your scene. Let's go and look at our mesas, and I might flip across to this mesa. I quite like this one. Hit apply. And I'm going to position and relocate this stamp within the scene. So let's go and first of all rotate it. I'm going to make it smaller. Here's a little trick for new players. One of the things you can do to create a sense of space is, instead of actually making the stamp super tall, you can make it smaller and use perspective to your advantage. Position it over there. It looks okay. And I'll just go stamp. Turn off our preview. And now we've got a nice stamp in our environment over here. Quite an interesting shape to go and explore. Now let's go back to our biome. And just to give you a sense of what's going on underneath the surface, what we've got on our top level object here are all of the spawners. And here are the individual spawners. The spawning system is completely configurable, and like the stamping system, has a visualization tool to show you where that type of object would be spawned into the scene. Let's just go and hit spawn. Now if I zoom out, you'll see something interesting happen. The content appears to disappear. It's not actually disappearing. What we actually do is, on the main camera, we have a layer-based culling system. This system allows you to customize how far away objects draw in your scene. It's a simple but effective tool to manage your performance. And just to see this in action, let's change the culling distance on our large objects. If I start to bring this in, you'll see our trees are being culled. Now they're still in the scene, but we're actually just disabling rendering of them. Let's press play. Not too bad for 5 minutes of work. Okay, let's change things up. This time we're going to create a low poly environment that is more suitable for mobile and VR. We'll choose the medium world size. I'm going to leave the target platform set up for desktop because we're not actually going to use Unity terrain for this environment. And then I'm going to use a Cinti low poly sample biome, and we're going to use the manual with stamper workflow. Now let's create our terrain. And what Gaia's done is it's created a terrain and chosen a default stamp for us. Let's go in and maybe choose a mountain. That mountain looks okay. Let's just go stamp. There we go, we've got our mountain in our scene. If you're not happy with how your stamp ended up, you can easily hit the undo button and then redo it. And let's add another stamp Let's lift this up a bit. Now, I'm actually going to do something a bit different here. I'm going to lower the height of our stamp. We actually have a whole bunch of different operations that the stamper can do. And you can get a huge variety in the environments you create just by mixing and matching stamps and the operations you perform. In this case, we're going to lower height. Now I haven't inverted my stamp, so it's kind of lowering height, but it's above the terrain. So I'm going to invert my stamp, and then we'll just push this back down. And you can see how we're actually cutting this shape into the terrain. Give you a bit of a better view there. And you can see where there's the water plane, so we're going to create a nice little lake there. Let's just go stamp. And there we have that interesting new lake. Looks good to me. Let's go back to Manager and use the same setup as before. Now you wouldn't do this in your final mobile and VR game. You would use customized controllers and lighting and so on. This is just for iteration on the creation of the world itself. There we go. There's our new environment. Looking pretty cool. Now let's spawn in the rest of the biome. And go have a look. There we go. Got all our little low poly stuff here. And let's hit play. Pretty cool little environment. We made it in a couple of minutes. Now you'll notice here, we've chosen texturing and normals to give you a sense of low poly, but this is not actually low poly. So now let's convert this environment to a true low poly environment. I'm going to go into Gaia Manager, go to my Advanced tab, into our tools here, and now I'm going to select the Terrain to Mesh Converter. Drop that out. We'll use this terrain, which is picked up automatically out of our scene. We have a number of different options here. We can export this terrain to an OBJ file. We can convert it to a mesh. We can convert it to low poly. We can create imposters, or we can bake colliders. Some of the less obvious features that Gaia has is this ability to convert to mesh. You can actually take your terrain, convert it to a mesh, convert all the terrain trees into game objects, and then you can decimate that terrain. Same with low poly. We're going to do the same process, but we're going to convert it to a stylized low poly style. Imposters, if you've got a massive environment and we're streaming terrains in, terrains are very heavy to render. So in the distance, it's often better just to have a low fidelity mesh or a terrain imposter and have that streamed in instead. And if you've got Gaia Pro will handle that for you automatically. Then if you're doing an MMO, the ability to take your scene and export out just the colliders, and that means that when you're running the server side of the game, you're running the most lightweight representation of your scene as possible. But let's go to low poly. We're going to convert ourselves to a mesh terrain. We're going to deactivate the original terrain. Now this is an important point too. Gaia, when it does this for you, you can delete it if you want to, but deactivating it means that you can easily bring it back if you want to keep working and iterating on your environment. We use the terrain collider because it's useful. And if we go into our LOD settings, you can see how we're actually decimating it. You can increase the amount of decimation. So let's just go start conversion. And let's look at what we came up with. Just wait for Unity to come back to us. Let's hit play. And how cool is this? You've got a true low poly terrain in which to run your game. And there you have it, a great example of how to create something entirely different in just a few minutes. To summarize, at the beginning of the video, I showed you a collage of what's possible with Gaia. Then I talked about the changes from Gaia 21 to Gaia 23. And then I showcased how to create 2 entirely different types of environments in just minutes. If you go to the Procedural Worlds page on the Unity Asset Store, you can find additional biomes and spawner packs, as well as additional tools like Gina and Scene Optimizer. Please be sure to like and subscribe so that you can be alerted to new videos as we release them. Thanks so much for watching.